Welcome back again to Absolutely Anima, the series about everything cinema and Arknights, and today I'm not looking forward to doing this one in, well, two ways. First, we have to look into the bag labeled Ancient Forge, and second of all, we have to talk shit about my second favorite instructor. That's right, it's time to line up and press F to Gao, because, well, we're talking about Swire. First, we should probably talk about why Swire makes it onto the list, and it's purely because of, well, Ancient Forge. Now, Ancient Forge is like Year 1 Arknights content, so not a lot of people would have probably read it, especially because, Year 1 writing was kind of on the lower end, let's say, of quality. Um, well, here's the thing, it's basically just the Nian introduction event, and considering the whole event is framed to be, well, a film by Nian, that means all the operators in it are technically allowed for cinema nights. This not only means I have to talk about Snow Sand, as she's the welfare for this event, I also need to talk about the rest of the LPD, which includes Strictly Bear Nian, the Chens, and, well, I'm dreading talking about Lee's Detective Agency. I mean, I do count alters for this niche, which means we will eventually talk about Swire Alter, who I like considerably more, but first we need to go to her, well, instructor origins. So, what does Swire bring to the niche? Well, she's one of the only buffers allowed alongside Tin Man, if you count, well, damage over time increasing as a meaningful buff for a buffer to have, and will act within core Cinema Knights. Although, who is dead ass using act unironically for non trolling purposes? Put your hands down, Killer Blood fans. Anyway, she fits into this buffer role with her talent, considering, well, her talent providing a 10% attack buff to ally melee operators in the surrounding 8 towers around her. That's right, 10% in a very limited range, nothing else. God, this is depressing already. Look here, guys, right? Swire suffers from very early instructor design where they were built to be somewhat generic, except Doberman, who I'm pretty sure only got forced into her niche for law reasons, and focusing on skills that buffed their modifiers. Because of this, their talents were incredibly undertuned off skill in an attempt to balance it, but this they will also would continue to undertune the skill modifiers, while leaving the entire bunch of instructors undertuned overall. And if you think modules will save us here, no, they won't, because Hyperglyph, well, hates the idea of buffing the pre-palace instructors, well, buff numbers, because multiplication is as terrifying as non-busted limited units to them. So a subgroup of instructors are left with the dubious honor of being members of the Persuado Delta Modules Club. They got given new talents instead of, well, fixing the actual problems. Because, they were terrified of breaking them in half. I mean, they did do it for the stupid kebab eating fuck, but that's because his skills weren't talent modifiers, so he was allowed to do that. It didn't save him from being a joke, but he got to be the exception. Anyway, that said, Swire's new talent with model is alright. I'll give it that. And I would even consider just putting it just below Whipslash's module in this tier, to be honest. Giving her if one free SP every 3 seconds for using her in her, well, designated role as a buffer does help patch over some of the terrible choices that come with year 1 kit design like Swire's kit, especially with S2, but I would have really loved it if they just buffed her talents. Like, her pop version does make it like 12%, which is barely a dent, and honestly not worth adding to any of the maths I do for this video, although an argument can be made for the entire video not being worth adding to the series, but I need to cross this bridge if I ever want to talk about Swire Alter. Now, before we move on to skills, I want to introduce you to our test dummy that I'm going to be using for this video, so we can illustrate just how bad this buff is. So I'm going to use an operator everyone has access to and most likely has built, which is Cutter. Say hi to my adorable daughter, guys. Now, aside from choosing her because she's adorable and very common on people's roster, she's also a reasonable. She has a reasonable attack stat on top of the Blade Master trait, so we can just try to make Swire look reasonable. So, or maybe just really point out how bad her buffs is, even in favorable scenarios. So my maxed out cutter here has 727 base attack. So if we times that by 2 for the Blade Master trait, cutter is doing 114 and 54 damage with every normal attack she does. By applying Swire's talent, we're upping her damage to 799, which means her basics are now doing 1598, which is an overall improvement of 144 attack. You may think this is a reasonable, but first, this is all before defense, and second of all, there's better attack buffers. Like, let's take a welfare option in the same ability as Swire with Heidi, who I'll be using as our goalpost. A modest Heidi with her pots with her S1 equipped is giving about 6% attack, which is worse than Swire, but Heidi is really going to shine once we add her S1 to the equation, which I'm going to save for when we're going to start talking about Swire skills, which we will do now. S1, Command and Dispatch, is my preferred skill. It's only a mere 2 times talent modifier, but its main benefit comes from, in the form of its range expansion. In fact, you don't even need the mastery for the skill to get that range buff, unlike the Asbestos S2, as it gets its full range at skill 7, which is a rare W for early 5-star design. So if we get the full range without masteries, what are masteries adding? Well, you're mainly doing it for their SP cost and uptime, because fuck me, this is miserable. At skill 7, it's 50 SP with only 27 seconds of uptime, because yes, I want to wait 50 seconds for a 20% attack boost that only lasts just over half of its downtime. If we want to be generous, and we should, we can add in her M3, which makes the uptime 35 seconds and its downtime 40 seconds. Still, 35-second uptimes for 20% is like spit in the sea levels of impactful. And to illustrate that point, let's bring out the cutter to cut through this faff for us. In this scenario, Cutter will now have 872 attack, which means her basics will now be doing 1744 damage now. Meanwhile, Heidi with skill level 7 and S1 is going to be doing 90% of her attack as a buff, and she does benefit from her own talent, unlike Swire, so her overall attack is 381 attack. So she's going to be giving out 343 attack extra to Cutter, so Cutter has 1070 base attack now, meaning one of basic from her is like 2140 attack, and overall improvement of 396. I want to go on a tangent about this, but I'm going to be holding back just temporarily. Like right now, all you need to know is S1 is still the skill I would recommend using, purely because you don't need to put masteries into it if you really want to like get something out of it, and the fact that it's not offensive recharge. It will end up being the weakest buff of the two skills, but this skill doesn't have isn't a gross resource hog, unlike her next skill. So just use this if you want a simple instructor with a simple buff, nothing more. S2, Cooperative Combat, is certainly a skill. We lost the bonus buff range, so we're stuck with spoiling the meager 8 tiles of range around Swire. And what do we get in return? A personal attack buff and a stronger multiplier. Don't get excited yet, we need to dissect this. A skill level 7 is a 50% personal attack buff and a 2.7 times modifier. And if you thought that means Swire is going to be getting a benefit from this 27% attack bonus modifier as well, I'm sorry, but she isn't Whiplash because she doesn't benefit from her own talent. That's right, she doesn't get shit from this talent, skill, so she's only going to be getting 50%. With the 50% modifier, and that's not even the worst part, it's a 50 SP cost skill on offensive recharge. Let's be fair, not even the module can save us from this. And masteries are only bringing this down to 45 SP, which is still offensively high for an offensive recharge skill. So look, if we're being nice and we're using our M3, that's 45 fucking hits just so she can have a 30-second buff for a 30% attack buff to everyone else and 80% bonus to herself. I'm just gonna say it. You should really put masteries into this skill if you plan to use it, because I swear 50 hits for only 21 second uptime at skill level 7 is some dev's sick idea of a joke. But okay, we slogged through the M3 and we got it up and running. How much of a difference is it making? Well, running it back to color, 945 is the new base attack for her, so one basic is going to be doing 1890 damage, which is still short of 250 when, well, from when we can just use Heidi as one, and this is me being nice. If I was being realistic, I would be using the same level of investment on Heidi for these calculations, and even add her talent to color as well for all this. Like, we're getting outdone by a welfare with barely any investment outside of max level and trust stats. Of course, you can argue that losing the ability to block, the fact that it's only up for 10 seconds and Swire gets to act as a sub DPS while Heidi only applies a mere passive heal, is more than enough incentive to run her over Heidi. And to that I say, that's a good point, but let me, well, ruin that for you as well. To conclude this video, I want to really illustrate just how sad Swire is, which is extra sad than usual for instructors by illustrating better uses for that Swire spot, since clearly using a bard wasn't good enough for you, made up antagonistic viewer person. Like, Swire will normally be sitting behind the main DPS you want to buff, and she should be acting like a, well, sub DPS, which is like okay, but a lot of subclasses can do that, well, this role better than Swire by offering something more valuable than just slightly more damage. For example, an agent can feed you DP, and in this, or in the case of Inez, a bind and an invisible, but that's a 6-star and that's cheating, so we're just going to put it away and focus on operators in the same variety as Swire. When King encourages being used in such a way a sub DPS would be used, but with a module, he's going to be giving an extra block, 100%, well, 10% max health buff, and a heal plus attack speed. And of course, he's still going to be generating DP for you, making him actually a really great pick for you Crusher fans out there. Lapland, guard Lapland, alright? Provides silence, not going to use it. Hits air, and applies arts fragility if you get her module, which can be more valuable if the DPS you want to support is an arts guard, but the ability to just hit air is going to be great here anyway. Sky Rangers can work here as well, and Contrail will just straight up just give you a slow on her S2 as well while blocking air units. Like hell, Swire Alter of S2 could be an ugly better use than normal Swire here, but please promise you won't use Swire Alter in such a way like that. The point is that Swire has no real value, as her single focus is on upping damage in a really weak noodle way, which is just depressingly bad. Her module may help with the horrendous SP cost, which I appreciate, but I feel like if it buffed her talent numbers as well, it would have made it more tolerable, and they would, but look, they would have need to make those numbers obscene to add any value to that talent and her skills and that at that point. Basically, she's bland and she has no real use in any team, which is just a damn shame because she's the opposite of that for me. I wholeheartedly love Swire, and this maxed out Swire isn't just for show, because I really do like ruling her out anyway. She does, well, she's never useful, but I just love her character too much to not use her. I'm glad that they did her real justice for her alter, which just perfectly encapsulates who she is with the gameplay and just, well, design as well. And I can take that Swire out when I want to indulge in my funny tiger gal, because thankfully this is not Swire to me at all.